Tonight, the patient in chief. The president making waves even as he battles COVID-19.
I learned a lot about COVID. I learned it by really going to school. This is the real school. This isn't the let's read the book school.
This is White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany tests positive. And with the election on the horizon.
I don't want to be attacking the president and the first lady.
The Biden campaign pulls negative ads off the airwaves.
But I can't wait to get to Salt Lake City.
Ahead of the vice presidential debate, the Trump campaign ramps up the vice president's role on the trail. Plus,
those are things maybe we should think through.
CBN News examines the militarization of law enforcement. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Homeward bound, the president, no longer a hospital patient, heads back to the White House. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Thanks for joining us. President Trump expected to leave Walter Reed Medical Center in about 30 minutes. That is where he has spent the last few days after testing positive for the coronavirus. The president also tweeting tonight that he's feeling good.
And Jenna, this also comes as more White House employees test positive, including the president's chief spokesperson. Here now, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy with the absolute latest. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, doctors say President Trump's health continues to improve, and they say he is ready to get back to a regular work schedule. His physician adds that nothing being done at Walter Reed Medical Center cannot be done at the White House.
Though he may not entirely be out of the woods yet, the team and I agree that all our evaluations, and most importantly, his clinical status, support the president's safe return home, where he'll be surrounded by world-class medical care 24/7.
And the commander-in-chief tweeted, feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago. And John and Jenna talked about this at the top of the show. Today, Trump's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, also tested positive, tweeting that she is experiencing no symptoms. And with her recent test, will begin the quarantine process. Now, doctors did share with us today that President Trump has taken 3 doses of remdesivir. He'll take his 4th at Walter Reed Medical Center before going home, and then his final dose at the White House, where doctors will keep a very close eye on him. John, Jenna?
All right, White House correspondent Ben Kennedy, thank you. And joining us now is CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, the president on his way back to the White House this evening. He says he's feeling good. You know, we've seen the videos that he's been tweeting and updating the American people with. What do you think, Lori? How do you think the president is doing, also based on doctors at Walter Reed?
Well, absolutely. And, you know, the doctors treating President Trump are really the experts. We've heard opinions from a lot of other doctors who aren't treating him, who often say, you know, I'm just an outsider. And we're really basing all of our opinions on what these doctors treating the president say and tell us. And what they tell us is that he is able to be discharged because he hasn't had a fever for 48 hours and has not received supplemental oxygen for 48 hours, and that he's relatively strong and energetic, and that he can still take some of his treatments at the White House. And of course, he's going to be monitored very closely at the White House. We do know, however, that day 5 to 10 after the onset of symptoms is usually, if a person is going to have a downturn, a serious downturn. It usually happens between day 5 and day 10 after the onset of symptoms. President Trump apparently began experiencing symptoms last Thursday, so day 5 will be tomorrow. But we do know that he's on the dexamethasone, the remdesivir, the polyclonal antibodies. These things are going to really help protect him from having any negative consequences tomorrow and the days to follow.
And that's why his doctor said that he is not entirely out of the woods just yet. Lori, some people have made a big deal of President Trump's trek outside of Walter Reed, waving at supporters over the weekend, saying it put Secret Service agents with him at risk. Now that he's heading back to the White House, is there concern that he could be putting others at risk of this highly contagious disease?
Well, regarding the Secret Service, I mean, the president's team of doctors did clear him to do that. I'm sure that they took into consideration the fact that the president really wanted to do that. And we heard one medical professional say that he didn't think it was the best idea. But, you know, when you talk about Secret Service agents, I mean, they sign up to die for the president. That's one of the first things that they are made aware of, that you might have to take a bullet for the president in the line of duty. The question is, was this really in the line of duty? Was that drive-by really necessary? But the president just wanted to show love to his supporters. And you never know if those Secret Service agents had already gotten COVID-19. Maybe they were immune. We hear that there was some sort of a plexiglass barrier. It looked like everybody was masked. And so the same thing could be said also for when he goes back to the White House. People interacting with him are certainly going to need to be protected fully, PPEs and so forth. And I'm sure that he's not going to be seeing a lot of people, and that the people who are going to be around him will take the necessary precautions, we would hope.
Yeah. Dr. Connolly also mentioning that those Secret Service agents were wearing the same PPE gear that the medical staff was wearing. Lori, the president is receiving treatments sometimes reserved for the most serious of patients, of COVID patients. What are your thoughts on this? Is it more serious than we might think?
Well, actually, many medical professionals say that the president's symptoms were on the mild side, and that people with those symptoms probably wouldn't have been given supplemental oxygen. His oxygen only dipped down to 93. A lot of times for regular people, doctors will take a wait-and-see attitude. Same thing with some of his other symptoms. But since he's a VIP, and we see this with other VIPs too, doctors tend to prescribe very aggressive treatments. So the remdesivir and the dexamethasone are generally set aside for patients who are in the hospital, and particularly the dexamethasone is usually used for people who are very sick when they're starting to experience this cytokine storm that we talk about, the massive inflammation, particularly in the lungs. And we know that when his oxygen dropped a little bit, that was a sign that there could be a lung issue, so they went ahead and gave the dexamethasone to him anyway.
All right, Lori. We are out of time. Thank you so much. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Well, meanwhile, Democratic rival Joe Biden is in the critical battleground state of Florida, campaigning around Miami and participating in a town hall.
CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener is following both campaigns. Tara?
With less than a month until Election Day, COVID threatens to keep President Trump on the sidelines. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is hitting the trail, trying to gain ground, promising to disclose all test results along the way.
It's not just the folks in the White House or who travel with me that deserve regular testing. Every single American deserves safety and peace of mind. And it means we need transparency.
Although podiums remained nearly 13 feet apart during Tuesday night's debate, there's concern the former VP is still at risk.
I want to thank all of you.
Biden will reportedly be tested each time he travels.
We have to do so much more.
In addition to pulling negative campaign ads, Biden promised to change his tone at a virtual town hall on Saturday.
I don't want to be attacking the president and the first lady now.
Then followed up with this.
When the administration was told, you know, that there's 1,000 people a day dying of COVID, the response was, it is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is because they are who they are.
As President Trump recovers, the fate of the two remaining presidential debates is unknown.
We hope that he is well and able to debate. If he is, Joe Biden will certainly be there.
On Thursday, Biden will visit Arizona, his first visit to the battleground state with his running mate, Kamala Harris. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Tara. Coming up, with the president recovering from COVID, where does that leave the campaign? And what's all of this mean for Vice President Pence? Next on Fake Nation.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, the Vice President and Second Lady tested negative for the coronavirus today. This as the Vice President heads to Utah, where he'll debate Kamala Harris Wednesday night. It all comes as the Trump campaign launches Operation MAGA. With the president off of the campaign trail because of COVID, Pence is spearheading in-person campaign events and rallies in some key battleground states. Ahead of Wednesday's debate, the campaign will hold virtual events, and then the VP will swing through Arizona before he goes to early vote in Indiana. Trump family members and top officials are also expected to make campaign appearances while the president recovers.
Well, for more now, let's bring in CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, with President Trump battling the coronavirus and seemingly doing better, has this put greater emphasis on the vice presidential debate that will take place this week?
Well, sure. I think organically it's going to, John. I don't think there's any question about it. And so then the question becomes, you know, how big is this debate? What kind of ramifications will it have? And look, I think what you have is you have two seasoned debaters. I mean, we know Mike Pence is a seasoned debater, that's for sure. Kamala Harris is very good as well. As a matter of fact, the campaign sources I'm talking to, and you might imagine they're going into the expectations game here, but these are Trump campaign sources saying that they know Kamala Harris is going to be formidable in that debate. So already the expectation levels are being set. But yeah, no, it's a big deal, and it takes on even more added significance for sure.
David, do you think Pence's swing through some of these swing states will move the dial at all?
Well, possibly. I think it can hurt for sure. And now with the president off the campaign trail, it's going to actually be even more important. So, you know, look, I think as we've talked about all along, Jen and John, elections are won at the margins. And anything that this campaign, either side, Biden or Trump, can do at this point is going to be a big deal. I would just say this. Let's remember that we'll have to wait and see when the president comes back on the campaign trail, because at this point, every day is crucial. Every day that he misses is crucial. And as much as Mike Pence is in some of these battleground states, there's nothing that can replace President Trump and the energy and crowds he draws.
David, the new Supreme Court term started today, short one justice on the bench. Republicans say they're moving full steam ahead with the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, even though 2 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee tested positive. David, this leaves very little margin for error here.
Very much so. There was already very little margin for error just about a week or 2 ago, and now even more so, or less so, in terms of a lesser margin. But look, you're going to have to somehow tie up Mitch McConnell with some rope and duct tape for him not to have this nomination go forward. It will go forward. It'll be virtual, most likely. I mean, even if it's not virtual, somehow, some way, it'll be semi-virtual with some of these senators phoning in or Skyping in, but there is no way the Republicans are going to let this opportunity go by the wayside for sure. Bank on that.
David, so some new polling shows the majority of Americans think Biden won last week's debate. The next presidential debate is a week from Thursday. With the president, still recovering from COVID, David, do you think we'll actually see that happen?
Yeah, I do. Look, Jenna, you know President Trump pretty well too. You know the deal. I mean, he'd want to go out there in a wheelchair if he had to do this debate. Well, then again, that would probably show weakness, according to Trump, right? But the point is that you would have to somehow keep him away from that stage and hold him back. Of course, he's going to want to be on that stage. And at this point, as long as he's got 2 negatives within 24 hours of each other, 2 negative tests, COVID tests, he'll be there. Now, the Biden campaign may balk at that and say, look, we want better safe than sorry. But I think at that point, it'll be problematic for the Biden campaign. So I think if Trump is healthy enough, which the indications are that he will be at this point, then again, we'll see in a few days. The way this campaign is going, it's like Days of Our Lives. Every day is a soap opera here. And my guess is I'm just going to, as the campaign turns, is the way I see it.
David, just about 15 seconds left, but is there more pressure on President Trump this time around?
Yeah, no, I think so. For the debate, for sure. Yeah, no, I think he didn't perform as well. He has to let Biden talk more and then strategically go in for some of his moments and be a little bit more jovial.
Right.
That's what people like about him.
Yeah. All right.
David.
We'll see what happens and if it happens. David Brody, thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
And up next, hours of grand jury recordings in the Breonna Taylor case released. The latest on that and the militarization of police.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
In ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Lawyers are combing through hours of recordings to learn the basis of the recent Breonna Taylor grand jury decision after jurors decided not to directly charge anyone for her killing. Instead, they charged former officer Brett Hankison, one of the officers involved in the botched raid, for endangering Taylor's neighbors. The grand jury records released Friday include 15 hours of audio recordings and provide insight into what evidence they had to consider, especially from those critical moments back in March.
We're still announcing the police come to the door, police search warrant, and we banged. I probably banged on the door six or seven different times.
No, the grand
not 6 or 7 times, but 6 or 7 different times.
Though the grand jury opted not to charge anyone for Taylor's death, it was in line with what Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron recommended, sparking a new round of outrage and protests around the country.
And speaking of protests, amid nationwide protests over police injustice, the militarization of police forces is under scrutiny. The goal of beefing up law enforcement was increased safety and security.
But has it had the opposite effect? As CBN's Eric Phillips explains, this transformation dates back to one of America's darkest tragedies.
9/11 changed our country almost immediately. America felt the need for greater protection, leading to the creation of an entire department, Homeland Security. Money flowed to local police departments as well, bringing with it increased military equipment, training, and expertise. While the goal was increased security and safety, some say it's had the opposite effect.
It's an armored truck that we have for deputy protection.
The Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office got this mine-resistant ambush protection vehicle, or MRAP, courtesy of the Pentagon through the 1033 program run by the Department of Defense.
It's fully armored all the way around, so this can get deputies close to the threat and without risking their lives.
The 1033 program provides surplus military equipment, like this $800,000 vehicle, to local enforcement agencies for free.
There's no way we could have afforded to buy this if we had to pay for it.
And critics say it's the kind of equipment that's helped transform local police and sheriff's departments into a militarized force. This simmering concern reached a fever pitch during demonstrations following the 2014 police-involved shooting death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Fast forward to 2020, with its widespread protests and resulting violence, some say the response from police was no less militaristic.
Those are things maybe we should think through.
Jim Birch is president of the National Police Foundation.
In the past, this program has provided police agencies with military equipment that I think some might consider to be offensive. And I don't say offensive as in I'm offended. I say offensive in the sense that it's used for offensive purposes as opposed to defensive.
It strikes people that these militarized encounters mainly occur in Black and brown communities, and that this is an unfair use of police force.
Brown University's Catherine Lutz leads a project researching the cost of almost 20 years of war since 9/11. Her team found that part of that cost is a negative effect on policing in the name of securing our streets.
As the war is wound down in Iraq and Afghanistan, that equipment was no longer needed there, but it was as a result of that heavy amount of spending that suddenly all of this equipment, tremendous amounts of equipment, became available to police departments. The military vehicles have eroded the public confidence that the police are there to protect them, as opposed to protect themselves.
Consider these numbers from the university's research. Before 9/11, $27 million in military material went to local law enforcement. After 9/11, that number catapulted by nearly 6,000% to $1.6 billion.
And I think that it's much about nothing.
Virginia Beach Sheriff Ken Stoley says protecting his deputies is high priority.
My position is, as long as police officers and law enforcement officers continue to get shot at and killed, I'm going to try and provide them the best protection I can provide them to do their jobs.
Still, according to the Brown research, 48 officers died at the hands of the public in 2019, while 1,016 citizens died at the hands of the police.
The notion that the police need to be protected from the population is belied by those numbers.
The items coming from the DOD are not all offensive. The Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office has also gotten cargo trucks, passenger vehicles, generators, storage units.
And then there's this. In military terms, it's called an assault pack. In civilian terms, a backpack. It's where sheriff's deputies can keep their equipment when they're out in the field.
We just completed an analysis of the last 12 months of data from that program, and it looks like most of what's being provided today are things like boots, goggles, gloves, face masks to deal with the pandemic, clothing items, some backpacks, generators, lawnmowers, those kinds of things that are saving states hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, this does not mean that agencies are no longer receiving all-terrain vehicles or mine-resistant vehicles or even assault vehicles and sometimes rifles.
We've not tried to get in any M16s or fully automatic weapons or bazookas or anything like that. I think that's crazy.
Every single thing down to a paperclip, if we want. We have to provide a justification how it's going to fulfill our law enforcement community support mission.
Researchers at Brown say police militarization is not just about equipment, but also about how much surveillance occurs in American communities, surveillance that did not happen before 9/11. And while police officials may say that it's kept Americans safer, their study has found no evidence of that. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Coming up, bearing witness. Visitors are treated to a creative gender reveal of the National Zoo's new giant panda cub.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, finally tonight, 6 weeks after the Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington, D.C. welcomed a panda cub to the family,
today the zoo is revealing that it is a boy. Scientists took a mouth swab during the cub's first vet exam to determine the gender, since male and female cubs usually appear similar at birth. The cub appears healthy and is just beginning to open his eyes for the first time. You can see him for yourself via the giant panda cam on the zoo's website. He is cute. I wonder what they'll name him, John.
Jenna, it's hard to believe that they start off so small and then eventually get to be the size of his mom and dad.
I know. All right, well, that does it for Faith Nation this evening.
Have a great night. Hope to see you again tomorrow.